Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Today we're going to look at splitting wedges, some of the more common ones, and look at the profile shapes. But we'll typically start with these because you've got Fiscus, Still and Husqvarna. And one thing that's really common with these three is that wedge shape. Sure, they vary in different widths, but the main wedge shape is almost identical on each one of them. Now the first one is the X17, and you'll notice that wedge shape there, 25 degrees, concaved, and 30 degrees bevel on the edge there. So that's typically of all Fiscus until the latest one, which is the X32 or the X36, and we'll have a look at that. So that's typically what you'll see on most Fiscars, that type of shape. 25 degrees here, 30 degrees on that about 6mm bevel there, and it's razor sharp. And this what seems to really work good as a splitting axe to penetrate and start to get that fractured crack into the log, and as the splitting axe penetrates a little bit deeper, it splits it open. So this shape is generally fairly common out there, and you'll see that on the Still. These curved cheeks here, very wide here at the base and very pointy down the bottom, and the same sort of thing, about a 30 degree approximately beveled edge here. Now, one thing that's different on the X32 is you'll notice that it comes to a sharp point. There's no secondary bevel on it. It's just flat. So that's the latest 30 degree wedge. That's a 30 degree wedge with no secondary bevel, and it's razor sharp. Now X32, X36, the new series that's coming out looks like that. And the other thing just to mention is that when you put this up against the Still, and we'll do that, you'll notice that there's not much. When we have a look at the cheeks, you'll notice that the Still, which is the one on the right, has a much bigger curve than the Fiscus. Fiscus have reduced the curve on the cheeks. Now the other one that follows the same pattern on the wedge is the Husqvarna, and that's the Husky there. Comes to a sharp point. It's exactly the same. It's around the 30 degree, just under the 30 degree mark here, and it's about 22 degrees, or I think it's 25 degrees here. I think it's 25 or 26, and I think this part's only about 22 or something. A little bit different. There's a few degrees difference in this, but generally speaking, they're fairly close. They're all pretty much close. Certainly with the older Fiscus, the main wedge is 25 degrees and the beveled edge is 30. Okay, so we've got some different brands of splitters here. The first one we got is made in Australia by Cyclone, and it actually works really good. It's got a head weight of 2 kg, but with the handle it weighs 2.8 kilograms. So it's well balanced, beautiful handle, and it's got a great shape. Now the other thing that's different about this, and you'll see these over in Europe, is look at that wedge shape. Fairly thin. If we just have a look at it here, fairly thin here, and you got this large curve here on the cheeks. So the whole idea is to get into the timber, start the splitting, and this will really bust it open. So that's that type of shape, and it really does work good, and you'll see them a lot all over the place, especially over in Europe. You'll see them a lot there. So total weight of 2.8 kg makes that a fantastic splitting axe. Now the other one we've got here, this puts the weight up a little bit. It's 3.1 kilograms total weight with about 2.5 kg on here. That's a Husqvarna. It's called a sledge splitting axe. And have a look at that. Again, we've got a fairly narrow wedge here and fairly narrow here, and starts to get much bigger at this end. So this really works good. It's fairly narrower here as well, but it really does work good. Extremely popular, that one, over in Europe. And the last one we've got at the back is getting up to the weight of a maul. It's 2.8 kilo with the overstrike protector on it, and it's got a total weight of 3.9 kilograms. And the wedge, you can look at the wedge shape there. I had to reprofile this, and you can see I profiled this for Australian hardwood because it was over 60 degrees, and I don't like anything that's around 60 degrees. I wanted around about 40, 45 degrees, and that's what I think I ended up with almost 45 degrees. That's a beautiful shape. So this really works well. So they've got nothing in common, these three. They're all different. They all perform slightly different. They're different than the other ones that I showed, the other three that were previously there. They're different shape, different profile. And again, if you ask me which one works better, that's a $64,000 question. Okay, so what I've got here is 5 mauls. And most of them, except for one, have got fairly common angles on them. So we'll look at the first one, which is the Fiscus ISO Core Pro. It's an 8-pounder, 3.6 kg, but it has a total weight of almost 5 kilograms. It's got a fantastic head on it, 75 millimeters in diameter for hitting wedges. It's got a beautiful wedge shape there, about 37 degrees, and about 40, just over 40 degrees on that beveled angle there. Extremely popular worldwide. One thing people complain about is getting vibration on the handles. I don't know, maybe I'm lucky. I never seem to feel any vibration on any handle, so maybe I'm just lucky. So another one that we've got is the Stihl Ochsenkopf, the old big ox. And it's very similar. It's got that 30-degree wedge shape there, as you can see. And I reprofiled this to about a 45-degree angle. And it's got a fairly large head on it as well for driving in those wedges. And it's got a beautiful overstrike protector on it. Now, one particular maul that I've got is this. It's only 2.7 kg, but it's got a beautiful angle on here of about 40 degrees. And you can see that big angle like this with those big sweeping cheeks. So once it gets into the log, it busts it open. It's got a 900. It's about the only one that I like. A 900mm handle on it. It really does feel well with a 900mm handle. Now, one that I really disliked when I brought it brand new, and you can see how much I ground down. That had a bevel on it of only about 5 or 6 mil. It was way too fat here. I've got this down to about 48 degrees on the wedge. It was 83 degrees, totally unsuitable. So I had to grind all this metal down to get it to that shape. It's a 6-pounder. There it is, 6-pound, 2.7 kg by Spear and Jackson. And you can see the type of wedge shape, but way too fat here. It would have been better if it was about another 10 mil longer and came to a much sharper point. Now, another one here that's made in Australia is the Cyclone Block Splitter. 2.5 kg block splitter. Fairly large head of, what would it be, around about 60 something mil, 65 by about 55. A simple, you're not going to get any more simple than that. It's virtually just a straight wedge with a micro bevel on here of about 40 degrees. So 30-degree wedge. Simple as what they get, but hey, it really does work well for what it is. So 2.5 kg, and with a handle, it comes to 3.7 total weight. One thing I'll say about a wooden handle is it certainly adds, especially with the Australian hardwood handles that they use, puts the weight up by 700-800 grams per handle, as what the hickory does here as well. So a lot of the fiberglass handles are very lightweight, especially the composite type ones in the steel and the fiscus. So I do like the wooden handles from that point of view, that they add extra weight. But I do like them when they've got an overstrike protector, a steel bit like that there. So which one works better? Again, that's a $64,000 question. It's what you find that works for you. What I will say is that if you've got a dull edge on it and you've got a large angle on it, it may be suitable for softwood, but it certainly won't be suitable for any hardwood here in Australia. If you've got hardwood here in Australia and you're looking for a decent sized splitting maul, you need to get one that's got a beveled edge on it that's no more than about 40 degrees and it's sharp, because it needs to be sharp to get into the end grain to start the splitting. Once the splitting action starts, you've got the fracture, the hairline crack. As it penetrates the timber by about 10 to 15 millimeter, the splitting will just happen. So the cheeks, they're small gains by changing different profiles, whether you've got large sweeping cheeks or whether you've got cheeks that have just got a little bit of sweep in them. It's a bit debatable as which works better than the other. I believe that in all of those designs that there's only small gains, because if you look at the one at the back here, the block splitter, there's no sweeping cheeks in there, and this works really good. So a lot of the other shapes that you see can help, but I think it's small amounts. Okay, so the end conclusion. What's the end conclusion? Well, pretty much if you've got a splitting axe or a maul, if the wedge, in the case of a Fiskars, has got a 25-degree main wedge on it, so that's your main wedge here, you only need to increase the beveled angle by about 5 degrees, as is the case in the mauls. So if the maul is 30-degree wedge, you only need to add about 5 degrees to that. So if the edge gets damaged, the beveled edge, you need to reprofile it, you only need to put about an extra 5 degrees on it. No more than about 10 degrees maximum. You're not going to have any trouble with the edge folding over, as can be the case with an axe. So normally if you've got an axe and it's only about 15-degree wedge, they might put a 25-degree bevel on it. That stops the edge of the axe from folding over. You're not going to have that problem here when, if you look at the wedge of the Fiscus ISO Core Pro, it's about a 37-degree angle on the main wedge. So you only need to file a couple of degrees on it, and that's all it needs. It's going to push it up to around 40-degree beveled angle. But a lot of them are ground at the factory on a linishing belt, and the operator that does it doesn't sort of take, it's not set up properly. It's almost like hit and miss. So you could end up with one that's 50 degrees or 45 degrees or 60 degrees. It's all over the place on this beveled angle, except for the est wing. The est wing, that's a machine finish. That's done on a machine. So it's precision angle. You'll find that on the Fiscus, on the splitting axes, they're done on a machine. And also on the Husqvarna S2800, that's done on a machine. And also on the Stihl splitting axe as well. When that angle is not done on a machine, you can end up with huge variations, which is not a great idea. This has really not much of effect on softwood, but it certainly has a huge effect on Australian hardwood. You'll hear a lot of people turn around and say that a maul or a splitting axe doesn't have to be sharp because it's not cutting. Yes, that's true to a certain degree, but it's got to penetrate the end grain in the first place. And in the case of eucalyptus trees, short fibres, twisted, interlocking. To bust them open, you need to have your splitting axe or maul to be reasonably sharp. so that it can penetrate the end grain and start to fracture the log and start the split in motion. Once you start to get that crack, then the second or third hit after that should bust the log open. So that's what's more critical here in Australia rather than overseas with the soft timber. You need to have them sharp, not razor sharp, but you need them sharp enough that when you do strike the end grain of the log, that it goes into that log and doesn't bounce off. So having it sharp certainly helps, and having that beveled angle around 30 to 40 degrees maximum helps also. Certainly with angles of 60 degrees is just going to make it more difficult to split. It will still split, but it will be more difficult. So the angles that I recommend for a splitting axe is probably, you know, between 30, 40 degrees maximum, and for a maul anywhere from say 35 degrees to about 45 degrees on that beveled edge. That's what we're talking about, the beveled edge. You can't change the main wedge angle, but you can certainly change the beveled edge. And if you've got huge big beveled angles like that, then that's going to take a lot more energy to penetrate the log. Anyway, I hope that information helps. If there's any comments or anything else, please subscribe to the channel, and all comments are welcome. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.